All right, we're going to have a difference between an aftermarket condenser, an OEM condenser, and a cheap economy part aftermarket condenser. So this is the original, manufactured by Denso. This is an aftermarket that some of the insurance companies say you have to use aftermarket because they say it's a like or similar to OEM performance. Is it really? So here, if you count these little small tubes, that's where your refrigerant passage are. The more tubes, the more surface area you have to get rid of heat and lower the high side head pressure. We have 57 refrigerant passage tubes on this OEM condenser. On this aftermarket condenser, if you count the tubes, there's only 36. If you count the fins per inch, and you have 1 inch, and you actually come down here and count the fins per inch, on here you have 20 fins in 1 inch. When you come over to the aftermarket, you have 18 fins per inch. So they cheated you on the fins. Well, not only did they cheat you there, if you look on the inside of the condenser, you see these little tubes? That's your refrigerant passage tubes, and each one of those carry refrigerant. Do you see the little fins inside? Those little fins on the inside are what give you all the extra cooling of the refrigerant, so there's more surface. It all comes down to surface area, and this is what they're trying to do. They want the refrigerant to come in contact with a lot of surface area as they're passing through, so they can dissipate the heat to the exterior cooling fins, so they could lower the pressure and condensate. You saturate the refrigerant, so when it comes to the bottom, it turns to a liquid. And so the refrigerant goes in here at the top, and as we can see right here, this is where the refrigerant goes in, and it fills up this entire chamber right here until it gets to somewhere down to this point. On this one, everyone is a little different. On this one, this particular model right here, let's see if they have a block point. Right, is that a block point or is that a fin? Nope, that on this particular model, they allow the refrigerant to fill this entire chamber. Some of them, this is a one single pass. This one, the hot gas comes in, fills this entire chamber. It makes one pass going across, and when it comes across here, the refrigerant comes down into side here, and it drops in this tube, and it comes out this hole right here. Or no, this hole right here. And that hole right there goes into right here in the top, and that goes, it'll be mostly vapor with a tiny amount of liquid. After the time it gets over to here, it'll fill this chamber up, and some of the moisture will get absorbed with the desiccant BBs, and there's another filter screen that goes down here, and this will fill up with liquid. This bottom liquid side here separates the liquid from the vapor, so liquid passes through the screen, and then it comes out of this little hole right here. That hole passes through this little chamber right here, the second chamber. See, remember, this was the first chamber for the first pass of the refrigerant to come through. Now it'll drop where you see this little metal plate right here. You see that little slit? This tank is separated from this tank, and only this fills up with liquid refrigerant. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You have 8 tubes. That's not a tube. That's a solid piece of metal that's just for support for this right here. You have 8 tubes that supposedly fill up with liquid. Now it does its subcooling. So now you're subcooling the liquid refrigerant that is passing across the condenser, coming to the other side, and will exit right over here. You're missing a lot of tubes, you're missing a lot of surface area, and you're missing a lot of fins with the aftermarket condenser. And then it'll exit, and you can see where there's a metal barrier right here separating the refrigerant hot gas from the liquid on this side that gets transferred down the liquid tube, going to make its passage to the expansion valve. And sometimes on the aftermarkets, what you'll see too when you come down here, when they machine this, they make it a little sharp. They don't chamfer the edges enough. And when the technician pushes in the line with the O-ring, it cuts the O-ring because of bad machining. Not all aftermarkets, but some. And then some, when you take this inner part in here and you measure it, and you compare this measurement to the aftermarket, sometimes you'll find that the aftermarket might be just a couple thousandths bigger. But because it's a couple thousandths bigger, it's not enough to cause a leak right away, but the O-ring will leak later on under a higher pressure, or as the O-ring ages and becomes brittle and hardened, it's no longer elastic, then the gas will pass after that, and it causes leaks later on because it's aftermarket, because it's cheaply manufactured, because it's an economy part. This is the difference between a cheap aftermarket and an OEM. And let's see who's the manufacturer. I've seen a little label down here. Let's see if we could see who the responsible individual for putting out crap like this on the market. So there's the label of the aftermarket manufacturer and their part number. Yeah, why you need a warranty on a piece of shit like this. So that's the manufacturer's label. If anybody knows whose part number that is, you know. Oh, TY. Did I see T? Yeah. That TY is a manufacturer, a boxer, redistributor. So that's a piece of crap you would never want to put on your vehicle compared to original Denso. And the customer may come back every time I get hot. I can't, it doesn't get cold. But the technician whose shop this car goes into in the future, a year later, will not know that that is a poor quality condenser. He doesn't have no way of knowing and counting the tubes on that. Very few technicians know this. So they'll say, okay, Mr. Customer, I'll charge you for diagnosis and let's recharge it. And he recharges it and it still doesn't cool. Well, maybe the expansion valve is bad, Mr. Customer. Well, let me charge you several $100s and we're gonna change that expansion valve. Oh, it still doesn't work. Well, maybe your compressor is bad. Let me change your compressor. Then he changes the compressor. And just over and over ripping off the customers. And it's because the technician doesn't know somebody put a piece of garbage like this in, and the new technician a year or 2 years later is trying to diagnose a cooling problem, but it's caused by the aftermarket condenser. All right, see you guys. That is how things are done in the real world. When you get ripped off, and you'll have some salesman he'll have a shiny piece of literature saying this was tested by a third party and how their facility meets the iOS SO whatever 9004 2022 standards, whatever bullshit they hand you, where you can take that piece of literature that they have saying their product is so great and you can wipe their ass with it, because salesmen suck. All right, see you.